Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is another special session with Lawrence. In this session, we are going to talk about container and Kubernetes. It's a very special session. Few of the people who joined from the LinkedIn post. I am Joe. I'm moderator of a DevOps and Cloud self-learning group. Lawrence is one of our technical advisor who has been helping us for the last 1 year. It's going to be close to 1 year on multi-cloud, DevOps, and microservices area. His vast amount of experience with 25 years across different technologies, across different areas, right from an enterprise architecture all the way to a low level infrastructure. He has seen everything in his life, Lawrence, if I say so. And those insights are gaining more momentum. And we are quite happy to be with you. And I'm very privileged, Lawrence, to have you with me for the last 1 year and our ongoing journey. Would you like to say something, Lawrence, before I start our Q&A?
It's good, Joe. Thank you for moderating this session once again. This is our second Q&A. You gave my bio to others, so I'm not going to say anything about myself. Let's get to our session.
Okay, sounds good. So Lawrence, as usual, we try to be different compared to the other webinars or Q&A. Okay, so my first question to you: we have been hearing a lot about, I would say, Docker and Kubernetes rather than container and orchestration. Okay, and then we also hear about OpenShift, and then microservices. Okay, so when you hear something like this, I always see that an Italian spaghetti. Everything is mixed. Okay, no idea about what it is. Can you tell us a little bit about what exactly all these people are talking most recently, and then very often in the last 1 year, if I say so? Help us to decode all these things which I just mentioned.
I understand, because the growth of containers and Kubernetes in the last 5-7 years is phenomenal. Almost everyone went into this, the phase to speed to market their application. Just like you often say, right, who came first, right? We have containers concept for a very long time. In fact, when companies like IBM and HP wanted to invent containers, they did that in 2003, 2004 time frame. And Linux containers are here for a long time. However, right, these concepts, right, most of the time they're focused on infrastructure. You talk about virtual machine, you talk about Linux container, they're all infrastructure specific. Right? We did not have anything that is application centric, and Docker came at the right time. Docker, they designed for developers. They designed the container for developers, so developers can have full control on it. Then what happened? Docker became the monopoly. They're still monopoly. They had a 92% market share until 2018. Now it came down to 82 because a lot of people coming into a lot of companies and the products, coming into the container market. But Docker is still dominating because of the way, the support and the product growth, user group and all. Then when Docker started becoming famous, right, we had many orchestration tools, right? Container is a single piece of component, runtime component. When you want to provision the containers into the cloud, you need to have a tool, orchestration tool. We started with the Docker Swarm, right? Company started using Docker Swarm in 2015 and 16. Then Apache Mesos. Then some companies developed their own orchestration tool. However, when Kubernetes started coming up, Kubernetes became like a big elephant, right? Big elephant in the meeting room. It became so big. Today we have more than 1,400 products in the cloud native computing foundation that depends upon Kubernetes. The ecosystem is growing, support system is good, and it is this COVID-19, right? Delayed some of our projects and progress. However, right, the Kubernetes will be going to rock, in the coming years, at least for the next 3-4 years, and it will do very well. Then what happened, right? Just as usual, right? Whenever something open source comes, the companies, commercial companies, pick up the open source and make money out of it, right? We saw that with the J2E world. When J2E came from Sun Microsystem, They gave that software libraries. Then during the time I had seen 100 application server companies, right? Now today, when WebLogic, SQL, JBoss, when I entered the application server market in '99, I had 100 startups in California alone that developed an application server. There was the connection port creation, JMS creation, Java mail, something they did with the application servers. Similarly, the Kubernetes growth of Kubernetes created more than 100 startups. Today, the counted around 385 funded startups that uses Kubernetes one way or other, including my startup KubeWriter. So what's happening with this kind of growth, right? They all take the distribution and customize it and sell it to the customers. So even this in the previous session I explained that we have Kubernetes, you can install and configure, very stable product. Companies don't want that kind of open source to dominate them. They want some support. So what they do, they go to companies like Red Hat OpenShift or Rancher, MicroK8 to support their Kubernetes. So there are two major divisions I would like to explain here, right? When it comes to Kubernetes commercial solution, there are just two solutions. One is the COTS product, commercial off-the-shelf product. OpenShift, Rancher, these are all coming under commercial off-the-shelf product. You buy the product and install it on-premise or any cloud that you choose. You are responsible for patching, updating, managing, right? Opening tickets to Red Hat or Rancher, whatever it is. You also enable monitoring, load balancing, storage management. You have to do everything by hand. You are responsible. You pay money for the product. You start using it just like a database and application server, right? So you are responsible. Managed services, Kubernetes managed services are coming from cloud providers. Example, Google Kubernetes Engine, very, very famous one for a very long time. That's standing for a long time. Azure Kubernetes services, Amazon Elastic Kubernetes services. So what this cloud provider does, Kubernetes have the master worker node concept. They manage the master. They manage, monitor, create, update, right? Whatever work needed for the masters, they do it. As a customer, you are responsible for worker nodes, right? You patch, you manage the worker nodes, you can deploy application, you can do that. So what is the benefit? 50% of burden goes out of customers. They do that for you, right? You don't have to do that regular IT operations work, just like you do it for your COTS Kubernetes products. Then we got into another advancement last year, right? Red Hat OpenShift saw the market, right? OpenShift, Red Hat is a good company with Linux and everything, but they don't have cloud. Right, the COTS product, sale, affected them in many areas because customers again don't want to maintain them. So what they did, they went and made partnership with Azure. That's what they said, right? Just like any other product in Azure Marketplace, you can go to Azure Marketplace and you can start provisioning Red Hat OpenShift in Azure Cloud. Same concept, right? The master nodes of Red Hat OpenShift will be managed by Azure and Red Hat, and you manage the worker nodes. So you can use that, the custom built, the ready-made functionalities of Azure, monitoring, log analytics, storage management. By default, you can use it. You don't have to, put any additional effort on the top of it, right? Then 3 months ago, Red Hat OpenShift made arrangement with the AWS, right? Now we can get the Red Hat OpenShift as a managed service with the AWS also. So it is growing very fast, right? Major products could become managed services. Managed services want to come into on-premise, right? It's going back and forth. But I see a very big growth in the coming years for Kubernetes and its ecosystem, right? Not just Kubernetes. It brought up so many products in the market. So it will be a good area for anyone who want to, progress their career.
All right, thanks, Lawrence, for decoding all those terminology.
No problem.
I think that removed a lot of confusion among the audience over here.
Sure.
As I go through, I will also ask audience if they have any question at some point of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think your explanation.
Sorry, Joe. Lawrence, you told very well about the Kubernetes, but I think you didn't go deep into the Docker. So that can you, as Joe asked, can you then clearly differentiate between the Docker and the Kubernetes?
Okay. So,
or if I missed it, I don't know. Yeah.
No. I did not say it. You're correct, Pradeep, because I often say, right, Docker is the bullet, Kubernetes is the gun, right? You have a bullet. The bullet, can't work, independently, right? You need a gun. So what the gun does for a bullet, right? It chooses the direction, it gives velocity, it gives chamber to empty the bullet, and it does, 10 different things for a bullet. So similarly, when you create a container is a single unit, right? Container, once you provision the container, you still need to give volume management, monitoring, high availability, load balancers, proxies, security, everything you have to do it by hand. That's where Kubernetes comes in place. Kubernetes is the orchestration layer for the container. Once you send the container through the Kubernetes, does 25 to 30 different beautiful things to the container. We call it like a pod. Once the container goes into Kubernetes, we don't say container, it is a pod. Yep, the pod is the group of containers. So what the Kubernetes does, it create a cluster. All the worker nodes are cluster. Kubernetes provisioning program also create a virtual machine for you. You can create I think the limit is 5,000 virtual machine maximum per cluster. So you can do that. Then it provision the pod. What it does, it replicate the pod across multiple machines. It also does scheduling, right? For us, it is 5 virtual machine, but the pod is always moving across various virtual machines wherever the capacity is available. The Kubernetes does the scheduling, just like how the virtual machine work. The same concept applied for the container. So it's move along the cluster, move across the cluster. So you get the good performance out of it. It gives security. In case if the pod gets destroyed, the Kubernetes will bring up the pod automatically. It's a self-start. We call it like a self-healing process. And then also the Kubernetes is an operator framework for containers, right? Kubernetes supports several operators, and those operators can be used for container management. For example, Helm is a good example. Helm is a package manager. Traditionally, how we package application, you package the application separate and also the OS separate. Then you combine together the version management, lifecycle, those things are very hard. What the Helm will do for you, you can package the container and also the Kubernetes objects together. So those type of ecosystems grew up in a big way. So without container, there is no Kubernetes. Without Kubernetes, there is no container. That's the market we got into.
And container is the same as Docker, right? That's what.
The container, Docker is a tool that supports container, right? Just like a container tool.
Thank you.
No.
Okay. So, Lawrence, I think that that was my next question, and you already answered that. If you could in one line tag it, what is container and Kubernetes? You already mentioned that. So
Yeah.
So container is a bullet, and Kubernetes is a gun. Okay, that's nice to know that and proceed further. Okay, so let's say we know now what all these things. Now let's go back to a traditional way, because everything is still running on traditional. You have an enterprise application. There is no web components are there. The web components started coming when there is an e-commerce boom came in somewhere around 2000, around that area. Okay, so the services, when they became 24/7, that's where the sudden growth of e-commerce came, and nowadays it is like you want anytime, anywhere. That's the philosophy which is going on in across sectors, across industries, right? But look into the enterprise application. There is no web component. It's a backend processing. You want to implement all this microservice, Kubernetes, container, and all those things. Do you think it is possible to make that application into this mode? If it is, my question is, where do you start and where will you end?
Yeah, that's a good question. Traditionally, Joe, these are all, we have monolithic application for a very, very long time, right? I did Java deployment, JD deployment for 12 years. All these applications, right, the components are tied together, right? Even if you want to change, one piece of the code, one piece of a small code in the big package, you have to redo the whole work, right? You have to put the whole source code, and you have to compile, test it. Again, you have to go to the complete, testing cycle. there is no way to split the code in pieces, right? Because of the various dependencies in one operating system, libraries mismatch, all those things, right? So we have the habit of, putting everything into one big, I would like, in Java, it's a ER file, right? Enterprise archive file, put everything into one file, right? So the change, became harder, and it increased the work on the IT operations and change management a lot. Not only that, the type of monolithic application delayed the process of deliverables, application deliverables, right? During this time, how fast you come to the market is the key. Speed to market. The traditional application, right? When you want to compare something to container, like a static install, right? If you install something on the operating system, VM directly, that is static install. If you want to do it on the container, that is container-based install. So I can use these terms interchangeably. Now what's happening, right? The industry, what they wanted to change, the cloud started becoming famous, right? Public cloud 2014, 15, they started using it, right? You have a static application, simple Java application deployed in AWS. That application don't have portability with Azure or Google Cloud, right? So even though you have all those clouds and all, you are not able to share the workload because your application tied to the specific cloud very tightly. That's where container came in place, right? Even the virtual machine is not portable across cloud. You create a virtual machine, you tie to the virtual machine for a long time. You can't take the Azure virtual machine and move it to GCP cloud. You can't do that, right? We don't have that kind of technology improvement yet. The industry wanted something portable. When they want to move application across various clouds in various on-premise data center, primary and backup, they need something that is not dependent upon the underlying infrastructure, that is container. So you contain everything into the application and you can move on. I want to talk about the T-Mobile use case, right? I read that article sometime that I spoke with somebody also. Before T-Mobile company started implementing container, the static install method, it took almost 8 to 12 hours for them to have the disaster recovery enabled. If the prime data center goes down, then it took 8 to 12 hours for them to migrate application, do the site recovery manager, do the GTM, all sort of things. Took them 8 to 12 hours. After the implement container, today the DR takes only 2 hours for them. Because everything is available at the container registry, right? If the prime data center fails, all you have to do is then pull the containers into the DR data center and start them. That's all they have to do, right? So portability, disaster recovery, 2 things. Third thing, the siloed environment, right? Siloed environment, is hurting the industry for a long time, even if it does. Infrastructure, they have their own area to sit, and the development, they have own area to sit. All those communication happening by email or change tickets or some form of spreadsheet, that's what we do for a very long time. So what happens, right? Every communication and SLA delays affect the end product. Developers, always, they felt bad. They did not have enough control on the operating system or the libraries that needed to do the application. For example, I know some companies today, right? They have 8 weeks SLA to give a VM. You're the development manager, right? You start the development project and you want, few VMs, and you have to wait for 8 weeks, to get the VM. Provided if everything is well, you start hosting the application. If you need to modify something or change something, again, it will go for further time. So it hurts the whole development activity, increase the budget of the projects. Not only budget, you're not competitive, right? You can't compete with the kind of delay. That's when container came. Now, when you see the container, you put the application into the container, not only the application and the web server, app server, whatever it is, the operating system libraries that is needed for the application, you can put them into the container. So technically, you don't need the blessings of infrastructure team to run your application anymore. You need a VM, the taker of the host operating system. Within the container, the developer can manage everything. So this is about this, this speed to market, right? You want to make it faster. So we spoke about portability, speed to market, 2 things. Now, third thing is, avoiding the change management tickets as much as possible. Usually what you do, for example, you want to install your Tomcat with JDK, you install that on the development machine, right? Developers test it for some time, put all those libraries, then you work on it. Then when it goes to QA team, what you will do, developer do not have access to QA servers. He gives the build and run book to them, they take it and do it. Same happens with production outage testing. Maybe it goes well for 1 or 2 versions of application deployment. Third version, you start seeing the mistakes, right? They download the wrong Tomcat, wrong version of JDK. They may refer the old build book by mistake, right? Again, you go on back and forth with all those mistakes, right? Now, how container avoided the problem? You create the container only once with Tomcat and JDK. It contained in the image. You put the image into the container registry. Container registry is just like a source control system, right? You store the source, you store the source code into the GitHub. Similarly, you store the container into the container registry. That's a storage for the container registry. Once you build the container and you tested, you put that, we call it like golden image. You put the image into the container registry, and every other team, QA team, production team, staging team, they can go and pull the same image and start using it immediately without going through all the configuration steps, right? Now, you want a change, right? You're not going to change on every mission, right? That is counterproductive, right? Today, I saw a company using, 300 virtual machines in the testing process. 300 virtual machines for one application, right? When you make a change, you're not going to make a change in all 300 virtual machines by hand. That is counterproductive. So what you do, you go and change the golden image and tell them to pull the new image and start. What will happen to the previous image, previous container? You delete it. That is called immutable infrastructure. You use it only once. When you want something new, you create the complete new infrastructure and delete the old one. That is called immutable infrastructure. It was not possible before the container, right? In fact, the concept of immutable infrastructure leads to infrastructure as code, IAC, right? We never had infrastructure as code. Today, you can hold the complete code for virtual machine, container, Kubernetes, everything as infrastructure as code. So every time through the DevOps pipeline, you initiate a new infrastructure. Version 1, new Kubernetes, new container, new VM, right? New storage, new load balancer. Okay, version 2, repeat. That way, what will happen? You will have the brand new system, right? That is the other point. One more point, right? The last point I would like to tell you. Production grade test. Production grade test was always a challenge in conventional infrastructure and also in cloud computing. It is always hard to have the identical environment between test and production, right? Doesn't matter how hard you try, whether it is cloud or on-premise hard thing. On-premise is very expensive, right? I remember the days, right? We had 64 gig physical servers in production. We did not have enough funds to buy the same servers in testing environment. So we had 16 GB RAM servers. We did the testing. Then we multiplied by 4 the results. That's what we did all the time, right? So cloud made this concept possible. Again, configuration became a challenge. Now, Kubernetes, how the containers and Kubernetes made it possible. We have the big Kubernetes with 25, 30 virtual machine production. I don't call it production. You can slice them as production Kubernetes, test Kubernetes, and in development we don't just test, right? We do that. Different subnets, security, everything is different. But what is the benefit here? You are testing your application in production itself. So you never need to worry about, right, what change happened in test at all, because you get consistent result when you do the testing. Then once you complete the testing in the test subnet, what you could do, you can switch the pod, you can move the pod to the production VNet. Then you can delete the old parts, so you get the new application. So the Kubernetes is made possible, right? Production grade test made possible by containers and Kubernetes.
Okay, that's interesting to know, Lawrence.
Yes, sure.
And as you touched upon, I was noting down, and you touched upon one statement. You said that the blessing of infrastructure. So I see that, in the Chinese character, there is one character, it talks two things. There is an opportunity and there is a danger. I can see that, what's happening on that. So I will talk about that in a moment. But let's go back to the other part as we are continuing. So we spoke about what can we do for a enterprise application. You talked a lot about what are the possibility and feasibility of making it happen and the various characteristics, top down, bottom up. I could take that as a note. requirement traceability as one of the things which you mentioned about it.
Yeah.
If I may summarize what you told during this conversation. Now the thing is, okay, all right. So everything is working fine. Okay, it's fun part now. What can go wrong? Tell us something about what can go wrong. Although you spoke a lot about all these features and the feasibility.
One thing what could go wrong in cloud and also contains over provisioning, right? Over provisioning, and we don't watch it. For example, you create the containers, right? You create hundreds of containers to be running in the production. You're also running the same containers at test. So what will go wrong at some point that you have to analyze the item management and make sure that you have to remove the unused objects, unused VMs, volumes, elastic IPs and all. Several places, right? They don't do that. So the first thing goes wrong with the type of setup, your cloud building. If you ever stand and wondering why the cloud building goes up, it's a mismanagement, right? We don't have a process. We still don't have a process to see that and take those unused objects outside of our infrastructure, right? That could go wrong. Second question, right? We have to ask ourselves, right? Do we really need container? Right? I see some small customers, right? They have 2 applications, with 3 revisions per year. Right? They're not really into the speed to market kind of, they're not into kind of a credit card companies or, some kind of, retail company. Right? Retail companies change the catalog every day. They have to, right? They have to change the catalog every day. They have to do the deployment every day, right? ADP, right? Look at ADP, right? Payroll company, right? ADP payroll company. They're doing almost 850 application build every month. They have to come faster. Regulation is changing. They have to come faster. Customers have unique requirement that do it. So they need the type of Kubernetes and container. But if you're a small company with 2 or 3 applications with few revisions in a year, in my opinion, you really don't need it, right? You may need it because when you need it, right? So the skill set will change, right? Just like when we got into the Java.NET period, I still remember. Suddenly Java.NET became very famous. The whole skill set for COBOL and C++ disappeared. So even the companies needed, they were not able to take down. So I see in the next 2 to 3 years time frame, right, the whole industry skill set will become with container, Kubernetes, cloud computing, Kubernetes ecosystem and all. They will not find people who work on the regular static application development and deployment. That will be the major challenge in the coming years. So in that case, it is okay. But again, right, they have to have a phased approach to move to the containers and Kubernetes, right? It's not easy, it is very expensive, right? It is good for big companies. If you're a small company, you want to manage your show, stay where you are, but start using it so you can develop your internal skill set and you can retain people. Maybe in 1 or 2 years time frame, right, people will leave the company if the company don't use containers, right? That could happen. That could happen. So cost is one thing, skill set is the major problem, right? That even you shared one of the video from one of the Sapient executive 2 days ago at LinkedIn. I like the way what is his name, Joe? What is his name? That executive name? I forgot it.
His name is Tilak.
Yeah, Tilak. Tilak Todapani something. Right? So a senior executive from Sapient. He mentioned very clearly, right? It's not just like development work, right? Every developer should do infrastructure work also going forward. That is already happening. Right, you do the Python coding for your financial application in the morning. You talk with the business users about how to put those arithmetic and all those logic. Then afternoon you go and create a pod for the application. So there is no division anymore. A developer will do infrastructure work and also the application work. When we get into the type of the unicorn setup, the skill shortage will increase. So that's why I'm keep telling, right, all these engineers, right, not just application, start looking at infrastructure, LAN storage, networking, right, virtual machine, how they work, at least from cloud perspective, right? You don't have to, see from the traditional perspective, it may be a big subject, but from cloud perspective, it is still possible to land those, non-functional components such as, whatever I said, volume, networking, storage, load balancer, all sort of things that can learn. So if this match is not happening in 1 or 2 years time, at least during this time, we'll be going to see a very big skill shortage in the cloud market in 2023 and 24 when the market ramps up very, very big. So building, over provisioning, and the skill shortage will be the big challenges.
Okay, that's nice to know, Lawrence.
Sure.
To know more practically what could be, what can go wrong, and what are the areas of concern. Coming to a strategy level, we spoke about what can go wrong, what are the features. Let's say a CTO of an organization or a head of technology decides that, okay, they went to some seminars, they have been hearing about all these things. They wanted to do this microservices based container and Kubernetes to their line of business, to their portfolio. Okay. Now, the question here is, what could the 3 or 4 factors they should consider before they start this journey uh, about all this new technology, to see what can they get out of this?
They have to see the fit because modernizing, refactoring the application is a big challenge. Right? You use monolithic for 10, 12 years in your organization. Suddenly, you want to containerize it, or you want to make it like a microservices. That is not a one-day task, right? It may take years to modify. I did consulting for a retail company in 2018. Right? They came up with a very good strategy. They started a very good agile process. They put infrastructure development, everybody in the same floor, right? Same area. They started implementing DevOps, right? So when they started implementing DevOps, we put Kubernetes on GK, Google Kubernetes Engine on Google Cloud. When we started doing it, we did together, right? We did not separate, we did together. The application team started modifying the application as a microservice. So every time they made like every piece become microservice, the infrastructure team and this Kubernetes they jump in and they started containerizing. They work together. So the CTO must ensure that all these people work together. There is no difference, one team, right? They often say DevOps is a culture, not a team. But again, you can say it, but from the budget code, where you have the budget code, right? When you put the budget code, everything is your team and resource, right? You can't say just a culture and do stuff. So everyone should come together. The refactoring activity is everything, right? They have to refactor the application with microservices, right? That one thing they have to do. Then they have to see the cloud fit, right? When I say the cloud fit, now Kubernetes you can distribute across multiple cloud. We have Google Anthos today. We have Azure Arc. You create Kubernetes cluster in on-premise or Azure Cloud or even in Google Cloud. You can provision those containers into Kubernetes into multiple clouds simultaneously. Right? We really started sharing the workload. So they have to identify those type of areas, right? How to share the workload and how to minimize the cost, right? Because cloud will skyrocket the cost, right? If you don't watch it. So they have to look into that, how to utilize those, functionalities. Third thing, right, I see a very big change. I see it in America, I don't know other countries. In USA, I see a big change. The executives are moving towards the PaaS solution, platform as a service solution, right? They're tired of, IaaS and cloud also. Even though you have IaaS and cloud, okay, you out of VM creation, storage creation, it all can do. But still, you have to update the patches, put the application inside, hosting it. You're responsible for 50 to 60% of the IaaS model. Now they're moving to PaaS. So you want Kubernetes, okay, we can go to Google Kubernetes Engine or use Red Hat OpenShift Azure, right? They go with that concept of managed services as much as possible because they don't want to make their hands dirty with various things. Skill shortage is another issue. So when they want to move to this, microservices, they have to remember, right, how refactoring is a big work, right? Containerization, building the DevOps tool chain, going to this cloud workload sharing, cloud building, right? And then PaaS solution, right? Use PaaS as much as possible, right? We say don't reinvent the wheel. They did everything for you, right? You don't have to go and do the same job. It is not advisable. So try to use the PaaS solution as much as possible, right? Then improve the skill set of the people, right? I know a lot of developers, who can work on these technologies without knowing the technology, right? So the CTO should identify those type of people, not match, right? Don't always look for a Kubernetes guy, right? You may not get it. right? Look for a programmer who can do the good coding, bring that guy and teach him Kubernetes for some time, then make him work. So that way, both will be profitable for a longer time. Those kind of things, CTO should focus.
Thanks, Lawrence, for that insight.
Yeah.
So before I move on to the engineering aspects of Kubernetes and containers, my last question, and I will open up for the audience as well before we move to engineering. So everything went fine. We had the strategy. We migrated a few of the applications. Now it's running in production. Okay. The question is, how do you maintain? Number one, and number two is, how do you measure year after year? So any insights from you?
Maintenance is a big challenge, right? Because the type of hot technologies, you can see the attrition rate, very high, right? That's why, companies, wants to go to OpenShift, Ranger kind of, COTS products. They have some support from the vendor when people leave the organization, or when they go through acquisition, or any sort of mergers. Now the maintenance is a big challenge in this part of the area, because it became more complex than before. Okay, one side we have the speed to market, we have the production grade testing processes, we have the DevOps pipeline that can create immutable infrastructure, but keep updating because the innovation is very fast, right? This in the last 12 months, Kubernetes alone released 6 different versions. Right? You're not going to keep updating those versions every time they do it, but it is needed, right? You want to be competitive, it is needed. That's why the executives are moving to, managed services. They say, whatever Kubernetes version they give, we take it. Right? At OpenShift, the support is specific Kubernetes version, so you can use it. You depend upon them. That's fine. You may not use the new features that comes with Kubernetes for some time until the update, but that's fine. In some cases, that's fine. So I would say, right, don't, that's why, Kuberator, right, when I started the company, I had that, the basic concept, right? Companies are building the DevOps tool chain again and again and again, right? I want DevOps, you install Jenkins, you install Prometheus, install Docker daemon, they do the same step. Again, company two, do the same thing. Though they want to do that work, they have to be very clear about, right? Is it advisable to build your own automation plan? Right? My question, no. Your focus is to write the application for your business. For example, Joe, you have a travel startup, right? You want to build a travel portal. Your job is to write the code for the travel portal, right? Not to worry about how container works, how Kubernetes works, right? It may be out of reach at some point for you because you're a small company. So what you do, you have to buy those products and stuff. Nothing wrong with the dependency, vendor lock-in, and all those days gone, right? People say cloud lock-in. And we went and lock ourselves into every cloud today, right? Not just one cloud. Yes. We lock ourselves into multi-cloud, right? You can't get out, right? So the cloud lock-in, vendor lock-in, is just a fancy way to say it, but practically, it is not possible. You end up locking yourself with one product or one service all the time. So when you do that, do that correctly, right? Use those COTS products and services, and improve the productivity. Than writing your own code for everything. You write code for your business, not to automate the code. Don't do that anymore, right? That's the thing I'd like to tell. When you have that kind of the guiding principles, this maintenance will become easy, right? Things are keep changing, right? You can't do anything about it, right? Every day that cloud providers announce a new features. Every day they announce it, and you have to manage. We can only manage when you offload some of your responsibilities, right? You can't do 100%. You have to accept the fact, and then we have to move on with that industry. Go with the flow. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, you rightly said about this. I correlate this when you walk into a Walmart or Tesco or here in Singapore, this NTUC or some of the grocery store. The moment you enter, what they do? Any new product or any new thing, they keep the moment you enter your welcome get. So you get attracted to that. So the temptation rages, you end up buying more and more. So when I see this multi-cloud thing, rather than focusing on one
Yeah.
and then offloading some of the responsibility,
Yeah.
you end up doing more and more. That's the analogy I thought of sharing with you
Exactly.
while I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
I will take a moment, a pause here, Lawrence, before we proceed to the engineering aspect of what we discussed. I will open up for the audience for some questions at a management and a strategy level, if they have any, before we proceed on that. So audience, if you have a question, say your name and restrict your question to a strategy or management level. We do have questions on the engineering aspect. So at this point, I would request you to refrain from asking the technical know-how of these technologies, but more in terms of that. So if anyone would like to ask a question, go ahead, say your name and ask your question. So Lawrence, we will take 3 questions at this moment, at this level, before we proceed further. Yes.
Lawrence Prabhu here. When you build the container, you'll be using the base image of certain OS, whether it is Windows or Red Hat or whatever. If the market is moving towards this direction, how the base OS license or will cost to the organization, or in case any new version comes up, do we really need to go ahead and build the new golden image so that it can be adopted the new version?
That's a good question, Prabhu, right? When we say the base OS image, it is not 100% OS. Okay, it is the part of the OS. I would say 15 to 20% of the whole operating system. The base image gives you the basic runtime components that is needed for the application. So it is not a complete operating system. So when you put the base image, right, the container works, very well on Linux, right? Portability is 100% on Linux. The reason is every Linux is same, right? They're using kernel.org from, only one open source. All these companies, CentOS, Debian, Alpine, Ubuntu, they all took that kernel and they build on top of it, right? Just like OpenShift, right? What is OpenShift? It's a Kubernetes. They took Kubernetes, on the top of that, they build a nice, graphical user interface and add additional components, right? Similarly, these guys, Linux, right? The core of the Linux is same. On the top of that, they added additional features, right, for the marketability. That's why when they create a container, Linux, Docker container on Linux, it work on almost 70 to 75 different Linux operating system without any modification. Okay. And when it comes to container, right, most of the companies don't care about the base image, because base image, we don't consider that as a full-blown operating system. But when it comes to Red Hat, careful, right? Red Hat may charge you, right? Sometimes they say no, because depends upon the enterprise agreement. They come back and say, no, you can download any base image. Your company is 100% Red Hat. We are happy. Don't care. We don't care, right? But your company have 50% Ubuntu and 50% Red Hat. Then Red Hat comes and tells you, if you use Red Hat image, it will charge you, right? So you have to talk to them and figure it out. So there is no standard answer for this question. Red Hat, careful, they may come after you. Other thing, Ubuntu, any open source you're using, you can just start using it, right? Coming to Windows, right? The Windows containers is not matured yet, right? Windows is very late for the container. Either you have to pack the whole Windows into one container. That is not very productive solution, but we still do it in many places. We have no choice. Now, Kubernetes, started supporting Windows worker nodes, right? That's where people confused with this concept of containers, right? Windows 2019 is important when you add the worker node to the Kubernetes master. Remember, the Kubernetes master is always Linux. There is no Windows Kubernetes master, right? The worker node can be Windows, right? So when you have the worker node as a Windows, what you're trying to accomplish? There's nothing, right? We have already full-blown Windows operating system. Then what you want to do? You want to do the container inside, it does not make any sense, right? So it will take, many years for Windows, right, to accommodate those kind of things, because Windows operating system is not like Linux, right? They're proprietary. They don't give the source code to anybody else, to research and use it. So it will take a lot of time for them to come into the full-blown container market. But we started using it in places because it's kind of a needed thing for us. So I would say 95% market still goes with the Linux containers. When it comes to Windows, we have to wait and see.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Yeah, no problem.
thanks. Anyone else?
Joe, this is Ravi.
Yes,
Yes,
Ravi,
Ravi.
go ahead.
Can I go ahead? Yeah. Thank you, Lawrence. Thanks for connecting the dots, because your session clarifies many things for many people, because people can relate to the analogy that you've given is really amazing.
No
The
problem.
Kubernetes bullet and orchestration.
Yeah.
So just from my point of view, I have a question. This is something related to the compliance. Like when we go with the VM, the compliance management, especially when a regulated industry or sector, they want to adapt to the containerization and then go with the Kubernetes and whatever the cloud provider managed services. So how the compliance management could differ from on-premises VM versus the container world? Like what kind of difference?
So the compliance is driven by the infrastructure even today, right? So the application must cooperate with the compliance. If you look at all the major cloud providers, they all support HIPAA, SOX, PCA compliance and all. Right? There is no difference among them. They're very competitive. They have to support, otherwise, they're not competitive, right? So they do that. So when you host the application in any compliant infrastructure, by default, it becomes compliant. That's why we see it, right? That's why we see it. Now, when you bring these, COTS products, right, Red Hat, OpenShift, Rancher, and all, we often ask the question to them: does your product compliant with HIPAA? Right? We don't get direct answer from them, right? This is the answer we get. Okay, you put the container into HIPAA compliant VM. It is compliant. I agree with them too, because container don't have its own authentication mechanism, right? Once you put the container into the operating system, it shares the authentication mechanism of the virtual machine, right? So if it is compliant, okay, the container also compliant. That's why we have to see it. But how Kubernetes changed this compliant in a beautiful way? Kubernetes has something called namespaces. You can divide the Kubernetes into multiple. A namespace is nothing but a virtual Kubernetes cluster, right? You can create a virtual Kubernetes cluster. So what we do in some places, right, when we create the containers for PCA compliant application, we create a separate PCA namespace and put the pods, the containers, into that namespace. So other applications, right, can't even can't communicate through the back door. They have to always use the proper defined APIs to communicate with them, right? So compliance is a big thing, and again, so we always need to remember at a very high level, right? If the infrastructure is compliant, so your application. Yes.
Yep. Thanks.
No problem.
Thanks, Lawrence. Yeah.
Any last question anyone have? I will give 20 seconds. Yes.
This is Sugadev. Lawrence sir, I have a question.
Sure.
Kubernetes will support the disaster recovery. If it is supporting, is there any backup restore concept is there?
That's a good question, right? Kubernetes, Kubernetes is built for high availability and DR, right? When you create your worker node, again, the cloud comes in the concept, right? You have availability zone in the cloud. You also have the regions. You can create virtual machine, the Kubernetes worker nodes across multiple availability zone. You can also create across multiple regions, right? Then
Yes.
your master can stand in one availability zone, and you can have the backup master in the second availability zone. So you give the availability for the master nodes. You can spin your worker nodes across, 140 countries with Azure if you want to. That's the high availability for your application, right? Apart from that, the master has a database called the HCD. The HCD needs a backup, because if the HCD gets corrupted, the Kubernetes master don't know anything about your worker node. Right? That's the only backup feature I see with the Kubernetes for the disaster recovery. Apart from that, everything is a standard cloud concept. Whatever cloud provides, you can take it for load balancers, VM, auto scaling. Everything is given by cloud, right? For your container registry is the backup, right? When you create a container, you don't go to Kubernetes directly, right? You push the container to the container registry. From the container registry, you deploy the container into the Kubernetes cluster. So you have the storage management at the back end for the container registry, right? You replicate the containers at the storage management. So you have the backup and DR for it. Apart from that, Kubernetes is a very convenient tool. Kubernetes knows, they have to support all those things. So they cooperate with other areas of the cloud and on-premise to give the high availability, but they really, don't have that, thing into them. That's the way it's called decoupling, right? They don't want to, dictate too much. Kubernetes is less opinionated.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for those questions. So we move on to the engineering aspect of our next page
Sure.
of this Q&A. So you spoke, Lawrence, about multi-cloud. You spoke about immutable infrastructure. You spoke about the feasibility of containers. Okay. So I was noting down few. So my question is, what is this open container initiative then? Would you like to talk more about this?
Certainly, right. The Open Container Initiative, started by Linux Foundation. In fact, Docker started because Docker wanted to show themselves as a complete open source company. They're not, of course. But eventually, what happened? Right, Docker became monopoly when the container growth started. Right, everyone started using it. Then the problem started. Right, as you said, what could go wrong? Right, things started going wrong. Yeah. Docker is here, product 1. Kubernetes product 2. Right. They have a different life cycle of the product, right? Release life cycle of the product. Say, for example, month of March, Kubernetes released a new version, right? Then the existing Docker don't match. They had problem, right? Then month of May, they fixed it. Okay, new version come, Docker fixed it, all good, right? Then month of June, Docker released a new version. It did not match with the Kubernetes, right? 2 different life cycles. So a lot of chaos, we had seen in 17 and 18. Then the industry, wanted something common, right? They say, okay, I don't Kubernetes. If I use Kubernetes, I do not want to depend upon Docker to run the containers, right? I want a common runtime to run it. That is called CRIO, C-R-I-O, CRIO. If you get Kubernetes, that default runtime is CRIO. You do not need to install Docker in Kubernetes to run Docker containers, okay? So there's a concept called OCI, Open Container Initiative, meaning you can create container using Docker software. You can create container using Podman. You can also create container using Rocket, Core OS Rocket. You can use whatever products available, but it must run on a common platform like CRIO, right? That is called Open Container Initiative. And not only that, whenever we talk about the container registry, we said Docker registry, right? We said Docker registry for a long time. We are not going to say that anymore. We are going to say container registry because the container registry will be OCI compliant. It doesn't matter what product you use to build the container. Container is a container. That's it. Okay. So that's the way the Open OCI is going forward. And we see a lot of changes in that area. A lot of progress in that area. We don't want to depend upon Docker. That's the thing.
Absolutely. Like you said, right? A bullet is a bullet.
Yes,
a container is a container.
Exactly. Okay. You should put the bullet into any gun if you want to, right?
Yes.
At least the matching guns, right? That's it.
Okay. And in this session also, as we are talking, you have given so much insights which is not found in the internet. And this is where I keep saying that removing the noise from the actual problem. So when can we expect your Kubernetes, the container course in EDMI?
So the Docker containers and Kubernetes course, I'm going to cover Docker and Podman, 2 major products I'm covering. I'm also going to talk about Kubernetes, managed services, and COTS products like Red Hat OpenShift, right? The presentation came well. And you all, Joe and other, few came and helped me to review the document. Thank you for that. I completed recording, 40% of video. I still have 60%. The plan is to upload those videos tomorrow, that is August 1st for me. Before tomorrow evening, I would like to upload to Udemy. It's a free course. Because it's a free course, I would also like to upload the course on YouTube also. So people can watch in the mainstream. Again, it is a free course only for 10 days, right? Udemy takes 3 to 7 days to publish the course. For example, if you upload, worst case, if you upload on August 2nd, it will be available online by August 6th or 7th, and I will inform all of you. Then from August 6th to 16th, it will be a free course, right? then I will add additional content to it, additional demos, additional content. I will make it like a paid course after 10 days. So it's a gift. It's a gift to your work, your selfless work with the DevOps babies. Right? I want all the members to get the benefit out of it. They can learn within 2 or 3 days. Then I add additional content and flip it to the paid course. So I'm a little slow because of this the hot weather, quarantine, all those things, not like before. But eventually, it will be uploaded to Udemy and YouTube this weekend. It will be done. Then I will email
Thank you, Lawrence.
Yeah.
Thank you for the good gesture and for the group. We are so privileged to have that. I also strongly encourage the audience who are part of the group, as part of your upskilling, investment on your own is something which you should look after. Not depend on your employer always for your upskilling. It's like you change your smartphone every 2 years. Nobody's telling you to change your smartphone, right? You do it. Why do you? The same principle you apply for your career upskilling. Your employer and you have a contract. As long as your employer need you for the exchange of your skills, they will have you. The moment they realize that they don't get that skill, it's a pure business. And then
you're like a smartphone, right? When they put the cost on it, you're a product. Yeah,
absolutely. So that's we look forward for that wonderful course, even though it is paid one. I would strongly encourage the audience who are part of the group or who may have joined from the from the LinkedIn, to continue to look after that, look for that. Now, Lawrence, you touched upon one piece which I was noting down about the Windows market and the Windows Microsoft OS into the container and Kubernetes. So you said that it takes many years and it may come. My question is, if that is the case, if I look into the industries and sectors, we call it the G6 sectors in the US or in the UK, the other sector in Asia, some of the sector. Now, if I look into the Microsoft as the base, some of the large and SME segments, predominantly up to about 50 to 60% of their applications still run on Windows platforms. If the industry is going towards these container and Kubernetes, because I see that cost is one of the main factor, apart from the other things which you mentioned. What do you see a projection for Microsoft to adapt to this framework or this container and Kubernetes technologies?
That's a good question, Joe, right? The existing application is a big challenge, right? I still see .NET 1.0 application in many places. Right? .NET 1.0 with Windows 2003. Very hard to upgrade. I did some work recently for a very big financial organization. When I made a estimation, to upgrade, some 75 to 100 Windows servers to the new version, the cost came around $1.2 million, right? They don't have that kind of money to upgrade, so they decided to run on the existing environment. But that will not work for a long time for them. So what will happen, right? That that's why the Azure is keep pushing Linux to the front. That's why I tell people, when you think about Microsoft Azure, remove Microsoft from it, right? Azure is Azure. It's a cloud company. They support Linux and also Windows to some extent. A lot of Azure products, comes with Linux-based Docker containers. They can't avoid that one. So the existing Windows application, the only way when the economy ramp up, they have to upgrade it and use it as it is. Right? They can't do much about it because a lot of logic, you simply can't change it with portability. But whatever possible, they can migrate to Linux and start using it. Again, we go through, as you said, we go through a big challenge, right? I see a lot of old Windows application sitting in companies. They don't know what to do. They continue to use this, simple DevOps process, right, to provision the application, right? Of course, that new .NET application is compatible with DevOps, right? You can build using Jenkins and you can push it to the Windows servers. You can do all shutouts. You can do the DevOps. But when it comes to containers, Windows is lagging behind. It takes a lot of time. Doesn't matter what they say, right? Announcement is one thing, but what is happening is a different thing.
The implementation,
different thing, right? In that case, Microsoft, they're working hard, they're working very hard. It will take time. But when it comes to Azure perspective, Microsoft favors Linux. So we have to remember that.
Yeah, they have to because of this. Okay. You spoke about the infrastructure aspect as we continued our conversation for the past one hour. Can you tell us a little bit more about this immutable infrastructure? What do you mean by that? Although you touched upon the immutable infrastructure a brief, tell us more about it.
So immutable infrastructure is like, you don't change it, right? You don't change it in the sense, traditional deployment, what you do, right? You install a Apache server or Apache server, WebLogic server into an operating system you're running in. When you want to deploy the new version, what will happen? You upgrade the WebLogic server to some extent. Some cases, you also need to upgrade the operating system. It is painful process because you have to be very careful, right? You have to do that upgrade test in several test machines, right? You test the operating system, libraries, WebLogic, JDK, all those things with application. Then you make sure the same set of changes happens in production and other environment, right? It is not always successful because changes very one of the way, right? They all become unique environments at some point, right? So it's like you are using the same glass for drinking tea every day, right? That's the way it is, right? Imagine, right? You are using this use and throw paper cup. That is immutable infrastructure, right? You drink the coffee, you throw it away.
Right.
You want the second coffee, you take the new cup. That is immutable infrastructure. So the containers and DevOps made that possible. You build the environment, version 1, running everything, OS compatibility, app server compatibility, application compatibility, library, everything is compatible, right? So when you bring the version 2, you don't have to research the version 1 environment, right? That is not productive. That is very counterproductive. What you do, you build the version 2 environment using your DevOps pipeline. That is called infrastructure as code. So you build the version 2 environment, you test it, then what will happen to version 1 environment? You delete them. Possible to delete. So that is immutable infrastructure. Use it once, throw it away like a paper cup.
Okay. Got it. No, thanks for that additional detail on the immutable infrastructure. So Lawrence, before I end up this session, one last question, then we will open up for audience for their feedback rather than question. So we know we are in an uncertain time around the world. This COVID-19 is bringing a lot of uncertainty across industries, across sectors, across the livelihood. How do you see this technology, which we are talking right now, is going to affect in the current environment, number one, as well as after this COVID-19 situation? At some point of time, I do hope that, we will get a vaccination or the medicine, okay? And post that COVID-19, how do you see this? Would you like to share your thoughts on?
Definitely, you're right. Automation, will grow faster, right? The companies found something that is very unique, right? I did a lot of disaster recovery and business continuity planning in my career, right? We always say that I have a data center in Chicago and I have one in Texas. If Chicago goes down, Texas will work fine because there is thousands of miles distance. It will work fine, right? So we made all plans, right? We had the GTM, we started services, replicated data, and we have full-fledged data centers at 2 different locations. But COVID-19 destroyed everything, right? It doesn't matter where you have the data center today. People don't go to work. The DR and BCP failed during this stage, right? We have a struggle, right? They don't say it out because it affects the name. Recently, you see a lot of outages with Azure and AWS, GCP, on-premise. Everywhere you see outage. Outage became very common today because people don't go to work because COVID-19 disabled the DR and BCP. Okay. Plus, people also don't go to work anymore, right? They don't want to go to work. They say that almost 50% of workforce, will not go to office for at least next year. Until next year, and the people don't go to work. So what they need, they need automation, right? Like robotics process automation, IoT devices, right? Edge devices at your home, right? So if you want to have a VPN connectivity, it will become a device at some point, right? You don't need to have a software. You will have a robust VPN device like a router at your house. The company will give it to you, so you can connect to any tunnel you want instead of choosing the tunnel from the software. That would happen. That would happen too. So when this robotics process automation, IoT devices and all when grow, you need a tool. You need a tool to orchestrate them. That is Kubernetes, right? So the container and Kubernetes is an already automated tool, and it will grow very fast. So one of the example I would like to Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is a very big fast food company in America. Right? They had a major problem with performance of their menu item because they keep introducing new items every time. So what they did, they create every time the customers went to the cloud and came back. The round trip was expensive. What they did, they went with the edge Kubernetes concept. Right? You can buy the edge devices for $1,000 from HP. What they did, inside the edge device, they put the worker node. And you can keep the worker node at your Chick-fil-A food chain. They put the cable and keep it like a router. The Kubernetes master sitting in the cloud. So all day transaction just stores in the edge device. End of the day, what will happen? All the transaction, whatever it went to the Kubernetes master and start, going to wherever it wants to go to. And you want to change the menu, you can change it at your worker node. Different state, different food habit, right? You don't have to bring that menu from the cloud. So every edge device in the shop, has that Kubernetes worker node with application you can change on your own. Right? That's the facility, Chick-fil-A did. They're very successful. So those kind of independent, decoupling of data center, right? The concept of data center will come into your house, right? You will not think about, okay, this is the thing. You have to every time you don't have to go to the cloud data center to pick your data, right? Maybe your whole banking data will stay at your home in a small device, right? You can access, you can use it. Only when change happens, you go to the server and come back. Remaining time you can see it, right? They will not hold on to the data. That's the way things will change. So when those things will change after this COVID-19, Kubernetes will be a big blessing for the automation. You will see a lot of work and innovation in this orchestration.
Okay, and that summarized to my statement. The Chinese character, one character, you see opportunity and danger. So if I summarize this, it's a danger to traditional infrastructure people who are stuck in the silo-based mindset that I am a network SA, I am a storage SA, I am a database SA. Whereas the opportunity is there to the application development team who have a good overview and experience of Linux, then they can kick off this process because they are entering to the infrastructure side. Infrastructure guys, if they don't understand this, then that's the danger. And this is an opportunity, that's the danger. I can, if I can summarize that. So Lawrence, thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to moderate this session. And thank you so much for continuously supporting me and then asking me to moderate and question this. I cannot say enough in the last 8 months how much support you have given me for the group. So we continuously getting all of your support, your direction as we are upgrading our skills. Around the world, there are 200 people are there in the group, and we are eagerly looking forward for your course in UDMI so that we continue to learn in an effective way and learn the actual concept rather than the commercialization aspect of, as you know, right, in the industry, it is full commercialization. And then this group is, avoiding that and be different, and we are learning. So thank you once again for all this opportunity. I would go around the audience, Lawrence, and see if anybody would like to share some feedback about this session. In today's session, we will take 4 feedbacks. So anybody would like to share your feedback, restrict your feedback to 1 minute, say your name and share your feedback. I think Dr. Pradipta wanted to start first. Go ahead, Dr. Pradipta.
So Lawrence, you have seen, I started at 5:30 when I was trying to hit the road, trying to jog. And I came back now, already I'm having the tea. All the time I was glued to the phone and glued to this time to listen from you. Because this is a very interesting area which is coming up, as you have mentioned a couple of times. 2-3 years, organizations, you will not find people without having these skills. So learning these concepts is and fundamentals has been very important for me. So that's why I interestingly joined these sessions, because this was the first session. I never wanted to miss this, and the question answer session was particularly very interesting, because there you learn beyond technology, which is very good. So anyway, I don't have to tell that how much everyone, including myself, is learning from you. It's just that you continue to help everyone, including us, and thank you so much for this time you are spending. It's phenomenal. If people don't understand the value you are providing and the amount of time you are spending for everyone with no return expected, that's hats off to you, my friend. And
Thank you.
I'm very, very happy that that I attended this session again. Very happy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Joe, always happy to arrange this. But Lawrence, special thanks to you to taking so much time to really give this insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pradipta, on that. So we're waiting for three more. Anyone want to say some feedback? Sorry, somebody was saying something.
This is Karthik.
Yes, Karthik, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Joe, and good evening, Lawrence. It was an excellent session. More than that, the new technology for us, even we have experience of 12 to 15 years over in this group. The new technology, the way you explained with the examples given, really matters a lot. And thanks for that also. I expect you to keep continuing, and all the best for your Udemy course. Definitely it will be a mega hit one more time.
Thank you, sir.
Next thing.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karthik.
And this is Dinesh. Joe, I just wanted to give my feedback. So
Yes,
Lawrence,
go ahead,
thank
Dinesh.
you. Thank you for doing this session for us. It's always great to hear from you on the Kubernetes, containers, and cloud and stuff like that. The way you give the real world example, right? That Chick-fil-A example, I was really that was really the best example for me in this one. The real world use case studies, that's the best part. I don't get that from anywhere. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thanks for the compliment, Dinesh. Great to hear from your perspective correlating to a real world use case. That's a nice compliment. So before I close, Lawrence, we will take one last feedback. Whoever it is, let's hear.
Joe, this is Deepak. If I can say, Lawrence, at least this day you spent like 3 hours. I spent 3 hours with you. You spent 3 hours with me. Thank you for that. And all the knowledge that you gave in the my 5 p.m. Session, and now what I learned, the pod that I asked, the question that I asked you. Now I'm clear about what is container, what is pod, what is Kubernetes, thank you for spending all these times with us, and the real life experience that you bring to the team. And Joe, thank you for moderating this event. You always, as usual, is a good man, and you're doing a good job.
Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you, Deepak, for the good compliment. So, audience, thank you all for your time to join us.
Sorry, can I talk for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead, Sandeep.
Hi. So you may not know, but I met Lawrence like in 2011. It's almost 9 years. So he guided me in the different areas because I was working as an infrastructure guy that time. But really, we met personally a couple of times, and he is so good, and he guided me. I was in the infrastructure. Now I'm working in cloud, but I'm not checking my emails or something. He texted me personally like 2 months ago, and he was asking, where are you? What are you doing right now? So really, I thought of talking to him. He is good. I know he helped everyone. So really nice, Lawrence. Personally, I thank you so much. So whatever the information I have, I'll start sharing. But it's good to see you. Thank you, Joe, for conducting all those stuff.
Sure, Sandeep, you are privileged to meet Lawrence a couple of times over in the US and Canada. if you see my story,
India,
I
India,
never met
Bangalore.
Lawrence.
Yeah, I met him in Bangalore.
Bangalore many times.
Okay, all right. My story, if all of you won't believe this, I never met Lawrence. Until now, we are virtually meeting. I found Lawrence through Quora, and when I approached him before that, it took me 3 months. I used to read all his blogs, all his articles, and then one fine day, I reached out to him over LinkedIn. And I am really looking forward to that event. And then few of us in Singapore, in Asia zone, looking forward when the situation will get over, and then either few of us will go down to Canada or he will fly back to Singapore, and we have some plans actually.
Yeah, sure.
In that sense, Sandeep, you are very privileged, and all those people in the group, if you have ever met this good person as a human being, you know, you are privileged in my view.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank
I'm
you.
very humbled. Thank you. Yeah. All right, Joe, thank you for moderating the session, and you know, it is very nice of you to do that again. Thanks for all the compliments and feedback. We keep doing what we do, right? This is one of the time, you know, we all learn and grow together, and we have a lot of good people around us. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Lawrence. We end up this session for today.